So we were off the northeast coast of Sudan, and it was around midnight, and Irenka shook me awake and told me there was a boat following us. I came on deck, still in my pants, and we were rail to rail with a battered skiff full of scruffy-looking men, and one of them who was waving a Kalashnikov rifle and shouting at us to stop. This episode is episode 4, and we're going to discuss risk. So we'll get into the Sudan incident in a little while. Teased the risk factor in some previous episodes, so I just wanted to get Irenka's perspective on that. What were you most worried about before we set off?
I think I was most worried about the boat sinking, getting a hole in the boat. And I used to lie awake at night thinking, one small hole and the boat's going to fill up, and how are we going to get out of the boat in time? And I used to have these scenarios in my head of how we would get out the hatches, and that's why I made all the kids sleep in the aft cabin so I could get them out or near there. I was worried about obviously crashing into something. That's another thing that can cause holes, like those big storage containers that you get floating around the ocean apparently. I was worried about storms, like weather changing and us out at sea and just dealing with that. And I was also worried about engine failure for obviously coming into ports, stuff like that. Those are the things that I was most worried about, really.
Yeah, it's strange looking back now, isn't it? The things we actually worried about when we actually know what the things are to worry about, given the perspective and the hindsight.
Yeah, although I would still be more worried about those things, I think, than anything else.
Yeah.
They're the things I would, even now, if I was worried about anything, it would be them probably.
So not the things that we actually faced then?
No, not really, not like the fact that I'm worried about them in the sense that I lay awake at night anymore thinking about them. But I think if I really thought about things that would concern me most, it would be those.
So in the solo episode, I said the real dangers weren't the actual ocean. There were things like jellyfish and dogs and other boats and stuff a bit closer to shore. Do you think I left anything out in that episode?
There's loads of things that you encounter in life that can cause harm, and they're all different depending on where you are. There's probably loads of little things you could find. If you're doing a risk assessment, you could probably list a million things.
I think if you did one of those RYA risk assessments for your training centre, you'd be on for months.
Yeah, so you can always find risk in anything, really, and they're different wherever you are. So there's probably loads, but it's just life, really.
So the flesh-eating bacteria and those, what do you call them, jellyfish, those invisible ones we saw in Australia. Sharks, obviously, but I mentioned that I felt that dogs were actually the biggest risk factor. Would you agree?
Again, it depends where you are, I think. And those jellyfish and, the piranhas in Suriname, you adapt your life according to what risk is in that place, really. And here it sounds horrendous, but out there, it's just normal life. And you know that certain seasons, you don't go because the jellyfish stingers. And once you're south of Gladstone, you've got to watch out for the great white sharks. And I remember like our friends just saying in this massive bay, saying you're okay over that side of the bay, but don't go over there because we've spotted great whites over there, but not over there. And I was thinking, surely, how do they know exactly where they go? But I think Australians learn to live with a lot of risk, and it becomes part of their life. And if you didn't learn to live with it, you just wouldn't really do anything.
I think you could do a whole episode on Australia in its own. It's a fair point, I think, because you move from one country or one area to another area, and those risk factors completely change. So you've got to readjust your mindset every time you move on. And even if you stay static from season to season, those risks and those dangers change.
That's right. Like here, it's probably more dangerous to be in the water here because you die of hypothermia, or you'll get caught up in a tide or something. A lot of people die from that, and an Australian wouldn't know that necessarily, and they'll just freeze to death because they'll be walking around in their thongs, wouldn't they, and their shorts. So I think the risk is if you don't do your research correctly, you don't ask enough local knowledge and find out. That's where the risk is. If you're not willing to go out there and try and find out, or maybe assess it dynamically and keep a lookout. I didn't really take the crocodiles seriously until we went to that crocodile farm and they showed us what a crocodile could do. Suddenly I took that really seriously. And then when our friend on their other boat in the same river spotted one going past them, I thought, okay, yeah, we do have them in this river. And now we know what they do as well. It's put two and two together. We shan't be swimming or even putting our feet in this water. So it's like you've got to take the information quickly and sort it all out and then decide what you're going to do with it.
The crocodiles was an interesting one because the crocodiles in the sanctuary, so we call it,
Yeah,
They named the crocodiles after the dogs that they'd eaten.
that's right. Yeah.
And because the dogs are kind of close to the water, and man, these things can stay quiet for 23 and a half hours a day. And then when they move like lightning fast,
Yeah.
it was a real shocker, that, wasn't it?
And the bizarre thing is things like, I found this fascinating really, that you're in New Zealand and there's hardly any risk at all. Everyone's walking around barefoot, including our kids. And Australia, you wouldn't even dream of doing that. And then in England, you wouldn't ever dream of walking around barefoot, because the idea of children walking around barefoot is probably almost like abuse, isn't it? But in New Zealand, it's normal. Every kid turns up at school and they take their shoes off.
Yeah.
It's all relative, isn't it, really?
Yeah. The contrast between New Zealand and Australia was particularly shocking, wasn't it? Because you went from a complete benign environment to an environment that just everything seemed to want to kill you.
Including the sun.
Yeah, and the leaves and the trees.
And everybody's had a skin cancer check, haven't they, in Australia?
Yeah. And the fact that you walk down the beach and there's all these signs about what's going to kill you, and it even kind of helpfully suggests how long you've got to get to the hospital depending on what has stung you. So it's if you've been stung by this, you've got 20 minutes to get to the hospital before you die. This one's, this is okay, you've got 40 minutes, so you can relax a bit.
I thought the most surprising thing actually in Australia was the sign that was in the park, the normal park in the middle of Brisbane, that said, beware of the swooping birds.
The magpies.
Were they magpies?
They were, yeah.
I don't know, there must be massive magpies, because why is there a warning sign? Because a bird has swooped down and grabbed a baby from its pram and took it off.
No, I
Wasn't
think
that
you
story?
misremember. No, I think the magpie was chasing the woman down the street, and it was attacking her head, and she was carrying the baby, and she fell on the baby, and the baby tragically died.
So it was attacking her, but swooping birds that attack you in a park in the middle of a city.
Yeah.
That surprised me. It just reminds you that even in a city where we think everything is all very organised and safe, actually you could get attacked by a swooping bird.
Yeah. I think the biggest danger we found ourselves in was in Moria with that jet ski. I've mentioned it in the monologue episode, but you were actually in the water at the time. I was actually in the dinghy watching you guys. What was it like from your perspective?
I know that bothered you a lot, and I think it felt like a threat on our whole existence really there. But in the water, I was it was a bit edgy, because there was this kind of fight between looking after the wildlife there, because they didn't want you close to the wildlife. But on the other hand, they were racing around in jet skis. And I think what it really boiled down to was a fight between tourism and how they got money, really, because there was tourists that came and booked the jet skis to go out and looked at these things. And there was yachties like us that anchored and didn't maybe put money back into the economy. So there was a little bit of a political thing going on there. And I think that situation can happen in any country, really. You turn up in a yacht and you are threatened by locals because you've got something they haven't got. And I think that was another thing that I had to be aware of everywhere we went, really. Being aware of ourselves and people that live there and how we might appear to them, really. And so that, it was an aggressive sort of thing that jet skier did, which surprised us because it felt like a very serene sort of place. But he did this sort of provocative drive quite fast up to the kids, and sometimes it happens too quick for you to really think what might happen, but nothing did happen, so it didn't traumatise me or anything. It just made me think, hang on a minute, there's something going on here.
Something had happened a couple of years previously.
Yeah, the child that was diving down on the anchor and a powerboat went past really fast and basically wiped him out, and he died pretty much immediately.
So I think that's what freaked me out.
Diving down his anchor. Yeah, so it's as soon as you have that knowledge again, it's what do you do with that knowledge then? Does it freak you out and make you hypersensitive? Or do you use that information and think, okay, do we want to stay here? What do we do? How do we behave in this area? Because we are in people's territory, and those situations do happen, don't they? We didn't expect it because it's quite a big tourist spot. So you didn't really expect that kind of behaviour, did you?
They wanted a certain type of tourism there, a certain type of tourist, and cruisers absolutely weren't the type of tourists they wanted. They made that pretty clear.
And you're not always welcome. Look at Captain Cook. He wasn't always welcome, was he?
If you want to compare it with Captain Cook.
He had a few kind of confrontations, didn't he?
He did.
And if you think about it, it's a similar kind of thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, was he killed by a jet ski?
Not jet ski. I think it was a guy in a loincloth or something. It was a Maori, wasn't it? The Maoris had the fight with him.
No, he was killed in Hawaii.
Oh, Hawaii. Okay, sorry. My history's rubbish.
Yeah.
Okay,
moving on. You might like this, actually. This was a comment in the Telegraph article, which is no end of content for us at the moment. There's somebody called Simon Curry who left a comment, and he said that our kids had virtually no experience that would equip them for life in the UK. He wasn't talking about storms of pirates. He was talking about whether they be prepared for the real world. And what do you say to that?
World. The real world. Is he in English? Maybe he means the English world. I don't know. Because the thing is, what does prepare you for the real world? First, you have to define what he means, really. And the thing is, if he's talking about life in the UK, how often do children get a chance here to be in a situation where they don't know what's going to happen? The unknown situation. How often are they in that situation? How often are they having to make decisions for themselves about good or bad decisions? Yes, they do have to do that, but how often do they get to do that? How often do they have to make a risk assessment because they don't know what's going on? And then how often do they have to solve a problem? All those skills that you learn from being unknown situations with different types of risks you're not used to. Here we taught to look left, look right, and then cross the road. And that's one thing, isn't it? Don't talk to strangers. That's another one.
Do you feel like in this country in particular, we live in such a bubble? Yeah. And we confuse our bubble with the real world, in inverted commas.
Yeah.
As we mentioned before, going to these different places and depending on your geographic location and the time of year, those dangers change.
They do change.
And by taking our kids from one set of dangers to another set of dangers, they learn to become very risk aware, very resilient, and to assess risk at a much higher level, I think.
Of course they do.
Kids who stay in one bubble.
Even crossing a road, like in this country, you look left and right first. In this country now, children, you need to look right and left first. In this country, there aren't any pavements. In this country, cars don't stop. In this country, there's masses of motorbikes. In this country, there's animals. Or this country, there are no roads at all. So you've got to work out how to get from A to B, not on a road. Like Panama, it's all by boat. And so you've got other things like
you trust the police?
Traffic.
In this country, you can't trust the police.
So it was like changed all the time, the risk. So, yeah, I think if you're looking at the definition of real world as the real world, the whole world, then our children are definitely more able to do that. If you're looking at kind of risk in this country, then they've had to learn a few rules since they've come back, but there's probably about a handful and then that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a ridiculous question, really.
I think we brought it up in a separate episode, the fact that I found it really funny in a way that when we tell our kids to be careful stepping out the door here, it's watch the roads, make sure you're back before midnight or whatever. In a place like Sandblast Islands, you'd say, watch out for the sharks. If it's a nurse shark, you're fine. If it's a reef shark, watch it. And if it's a bull shark, get out the water.
So there's loads of networks that have been formed in a child's brain that travels the world. And they have to put two and two together and put all that information together. And that's what they're doing. They're calculating this stuff all the time. So they're almost ready for anything, really. That's what I would say. You have to be ready for anything.
But you also said virtually no experience that would equip them for life in the UK. I think our kids are pretty globally minded now. I don't think they're ever going to stay in the UK for any length of time by what I've heard of them say. They want to travel a lot.
Yeah, a lot of kids here don't necessarily want to go out. Again, like some people don't want to go travelling here because they haven't got someone to go with. Our kids would probably be happy to go on their own, meet other people, who knows. But it didn't take them long to get the smartphone.
Yeah.
Isn't that really quick?
There's no mention of the risks online, was there, really?
No, and the risk of leaving your children I have to bring this one in, sorry, but the risk of just leaving your children doing nothing because they're safe on their phones, but not safe as well.
Do you want me to bring a soapbox?
When the risk of children not doing anything because they're spending too long on their phones not doing anything, they might be safe in their rooms. That's the thing.
The risk of saturated fats and obesity and all this sort of thing. The stuff that we haven't evolutionarily adapted to see as dangers, and yet they're the biggest killers.
I think there's a risk if you don't do anything or expose your children to any risk. That's a risk. It's not safe at all if you don't expose them to anything. If they don't learn to cross a road on their own, they'll never cross a road without a traffic light or a zebra crossing. They'll only be able to do it in the place where there is a zebra crossing.
There were obviously funny moments around risk. I do remember when I was in Suriname and I was waist deep in the water in the Suriname River in the Amazon jungle. And there was a big sign there saying what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And one of the things on that sign said, don't enter the water with open wounds. And I naively asked the guy who was there, I said, is that because of the risk of infection? Because there's obviously a lot of things in the water here. He said, no, mate, that's just so you don't attract the piranhas.
Yeah.
And I made a quick exit from it. And it's like that naivety of being like somebody from the West who kind of goes to these places and just...
It got very complicated, didn't it, going kayaking after that? Because there was the issue with all the big spiders even that lived on the kayaks.
They did, yeah, they lived in the kayak themselves. And I remember carrying the kayak and putting it down, and as soon as I took my hand away from the handhold, a tarantula appeared out
Yeah,
there.
you can't hold it for too long, but you can't stand in the water too long because you're worried about the piranhas, and you can't be on the sand too long because do you remember the
Fire ants.
fire ants? Really painful when they bit. You want to get in the kayak quick, but you want to check for spiders first, but you don't want to hang in the water too much. It became very complicated actually going kayaking, but when you went kayaking, it was amazing, wasn't it?
It was very efficient, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was just incredible, the stuff we saw when we went kayaking on that river in the Amazon rainforest.
The fact that people actually live in the jungle is amazing to me, how they don't just die after day one.
But there's whole villages living all the way up the river, and their life revolves around the river. They wash in the river, they cook near the river, the children swim in the river. You know, they've learned to live around it.
And the lancehead vipers, they kill more people than any other snake, the mambas and pythons put together. And even walking through the jungle, the time we went through, there was a couple of lancehead vipers there, and the guy dispatched a couple with his machete.
Yeah, but I think, again, that just brings us back to that whole subject that for them, it's normal in those places, that kind of thing. We think it's funny and crazy, but for them, that is normal life. You have to learn to live with those things.
Yeah.
And even the snakes, when you're going through, you have a certain way of going through, you always carry a machete, and that's how you learn to live with it. So it's all relative, really, isn't it? Like, they must find our lives really weird as well.
Yeah, the things that we actually think of as danger, they must just think we're nuts. The other thing I learned in Indonesia as well, and in Gibraltar, was to carry a stick because of the monkeys. Do you remember when we used to walk through that little forested area in Rebak Island?
Yeah, in Malaysia.
The monkeys were quite aggressive there.
Yeah.
One attacked me. It came at me.
I did that with dogs as well. If we were in places where we knew there was wild dogs and stuff, I would always walk around with a stick or a stone, or just ready, really. Yeah, you just adapt, don't you?
Yeah. I remember another time in Sambas as well, Darry was actually more afraid of you than sharks, because when he bought a catchback, he'd been spearfishing, and he was so worried about getting blood on the deck, he hung it over the side of the boat. And then about 5 o'clock in the morning, I was lying in bed and I heard this banging, and I actually thought the boat was bumping up against another boat. So I quickly got up. I thought we dragged anchor. But what had happened was the blood was attracting sharks, and we were surrounded by sharks, and they were trying to get to this fish. It was dripping blood, and it kept banging against the hull. I was so hacked off, I just threw the fish and let the sharks have it.
But I think that, again, just says that they're not really very far away. So even though we found a nice anchorage and we were swimming there and just carrying on as normal, you don't know how far away these things are. And so you just learn, again, not to do certain things. Like, you wouldn't do that again, would you, ever hang out fish at the back of the boat?
No. Sharks are only interested in dead or dying fish, and they're not really interested in you as humans. You're not food.
And that's something that happened a few times, really. Remember in Minerva Reef, we heard about someone who was throwing shark off the boat, and that attracted a certain shark, and someone else saw it, and you can create real problems like that. So you have to learn these things and then not do them, really.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the Red Sea incident, because everybody asks about that, and I think it has to be said that it was one small episode in an otherwise quite safe 8-year circumnavigation, wasn't it? But it obviously had a big impact on us at the time. So you were on watch at the time, and I was in bed, and you woke me up. So can you walk me through exactly what happened?
Yeah, again, it wasn't one of those things that I felt like it was such a big deal, really. I think about it, and I don't know why that is, because nothing happened. All we did is got approached. Nothing other than that. We carried on with our day, our night. But yeah, we were just driving along. I was on watch. There was a light. Thought it was a fishing boat. Light disappeared. I thought, okay, fishing boat gone. Next minute, the light was much closer, and it came really fast around to the side of the boat. And I was suddenly taken aback, thinking, this is strange. This is not a fishing boat. And so then I think I just called, because I just thought, oh, we've got company. And I'd been messaging our buddies to see if they'd seen it, and they'd seen it, and we thought it was okay. But yeah, so they suddenly approached, and there they were. And we were driving along at sort of 4 or 5 knots, and they were next to us, and there was the 4 guys there. I think in my head, I was just thinking, I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping for you, because in my head I have, you don't stop for people, because don't let them board your boat.
But it has to be said, we had been approached by fishermen before on several occasions.
Close though, yeah.
Not that close, no. But
no one whizzed up like that, turned the light off. The whole suspiciousness of it was midnight, of the light going off and them coming round suddenly. Like, why would they have done that? Because it's all very suspicious, and they asked us to stop. And also I knew that you can get stopped by coast guards in Sudan. And so it does sometimes happen. And there's never been, so far, there's not any history of anyone getting into trouble in Sudan. So
they had further south in Eritrea, I believe.
Yeah, but not even in trouble. It was more of the authority. So I was very aware that there wasn't a piracy problem in Sudan. And so I actually thought these are probably some kind of authority, but I didn't trust them completely because I didn't trust the way they approached us, and I didn't think it was the right time to do that kind of thing. I thought it was an odd time and they approached us. So it was a strange one, but I didn't have any knowledge about any instance of piracy in the past ever in Sudan. But I just knew that we wouldn't stop because I didn't think there was any reason to. We're 30 miles from the border of Egypt, and I just didn't want to stop because I thought stopping is then engaging, and it's the wrong time to be engaging with someone at this time of night. I actually think they probably would have asked for something from us, and we probably would have given them some cigarettes. They might have asked for something else, maybe some money, and we probably would have seen what we had. And I think they probably wanted something because there's a desperate situation in Sudan at the moment and different factions. So I think it wasn't going to be a hijack, I don't think. And I don't think they would have wanted to cause any harm, but I think they would have tried to get something out of us. But it was a little bit of an aggressive approach. So I didn't really want to negotiate. It's not like fishermen come up and they go, do you want some water or drinks? It was a sudden thing.
Well, the fact that they waved the Kalashnikov at us was, I mean, wouldn't really do that, would they?
No, but that's why I think it was probably the authorities. They have arms, they do.
It's also difficult to differentiate between the authority and pirates and the militia there, because Sudan's run by militia.
I think they would have half been in a position of authority, but they wouldn't be, I don't know what their job description is. If it wouldn't have been a clear-cut job description, I think in their job description they probably would have thought they can try and get what they want out of us.
Yeah, we're in their waters.
So let's see what we can get out of these people. Because again, just like the Maria situation, we have things they could really do with because they've got nothing. So we would have probably tried to give them whatever we could so they could wave us on our way. I think that's probably what would have happened. But because, again, even stopping puts you at a slightly more different situation. If you can avoid even negotiating with them, I think is better. So that's why I just thought, we're not stopping, we're keeping going. And actually I just said to them, I said, we can't stop, we've got to keep up with our friends.
And inadvertently threw them under the bus.
Well, then they went off towards them, but luckily the engine, broke down and we managed to go overtake. And then we all got panicky after that and started putting our foot down and went really fast.
Which kind of kicked off for kind of a 12-hour period of whatever could have gone wrong did go wrong, because then the pump went on the engine, and so we had major problems.
Yeah.
And then we anchored on the Egyptian-Sudanese border, which is a disputed border anyway, so you've got to be a bit careful.
We got our anchor stuck.
And then we got our anchor stuck, and it was getting on for dusk the next day because we'd had to rest up and repair the engine. And that was 15 metres down, which is right on the limit of our freediving capabilities to deal with something on the floor. And somebody had been killed a few weeks previous to that by a shark on that coastline, on the Egyptian coastline. Everything seemed to be piling up, and then we had to free the anchor.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes you've got more issues to deal with then, that because of what our reaction and probably our panic, we shouldn't have put so many revs on.
It was to say that it didn't actually, we just bombed it through the night, didn't we, at full throttle?
We did. Anyway, who knows whether we needed to or not, whether they would come back. You don't really know. Again, it's another unknown situation. We used the information we had, and we made a decision and did it, and then had to deal with the consequences. But we got out of the situation. I don't know. You don't even realise how close you are to these situations sometimes, and you don't really know always what's going to happen.
2 weeks later, the Rapid Reaction Force, the Sudanese opposition, they bombed Port Sudan, which we'd only just passed at the time. Yeah. So we were actually in the front line of a war zone. We just didn't realise it at the time.
I suppose so, yeah.
We had Egypt after that, which is the story in itself.
But there's always things around the next corner, and I always prepared myself for the very worst going through the Red Sea. And many things happened. But in some ways, I just expected it. I don't know, I set my mindset and things are going to happen, and they did happen. Yeah. And I even thought about what if we did get kidnapped and how we would deal with that. But I think sometimes that's what you have to do, is you're not surprised then, and you just have a few things, plans, how you're going to deal with it. And then you do deal with it. And we didn't get kidnapped, and we didn't lose our boat or anything else. So actually, I thought it went quite well, actually. Didn't lose the kids either.
That was a bonus, right? So on reflection, knowing what you know now, and say you were back in Thailand and you were trying to get back to Europe, would you do the Red Sea again, or would you go round by South Africa?
No, would I do it again? Never say never, really. It's not an ideal way to do it. Because the really main problem, I think, is the wind is against you all the time. That's the thing that I was most worried about, having the wind against you and having to motor.
I think that's one thing I didn't fully anticipate, was the use of the engine, how much we had to use the engine.
Yeah.
And how volatile that situation it was. Now, a buddy boat had a catamaran, so they got 2 engines.
Yeah.
We did actually meet up with a boat in Djibouti who, didn't they lose the water pump?
They had issues getting into Djibouti. They had to sail closer to the Somalian border. I think that, for me, is the biggest risk along there, is you're relying on your power. And that is a risk in itself, because you haven't got any backup. I think you always need a backup with a risk. And there's very little backup. There's hardly anywhere that you can get boat parts or even stop. You can't stop in many places. You know what the risk might be. You have a plan, you have a backup, various backups actually. And if that doesn't work, what's the next backup? And it's really hard there because there isn't much backup really. So then you're quite vulnerable. And that was always the thing that I worry about most, is that we can totally rely on our engine. Even if you have engine failure, you can always sail. I have to actually say that I probably would do it, but I would do it more under sail, like those French guys that we sailed with. They sailed most of it.
But even through the Bab el Mandeb, near the Houthis.
You can sail that, can't you? Because the wind's with you. So it's pretty good. I think the ones that I was most inspired by was our friends who sailed most of the Red Sea. They just tacked their way up, and I would go on a boat that you could easily tack your way up. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer one on huge engines and bomb my way up it.
Yeah, as a backup plan again.
So if somebody was in Thailand right now and they rang you up and they said, what would you recommend going up the Red Sea or around South Africa? And cards on the table, what would you say?
I've never done South Africa, so I don't know what it is like around there, because even Mozambique can be a bit risky as well now, and you have to go past it.
Because of the open ocean and the waves down there, quite mountainous.
I would just say be ready for anything, really, if you want to do that route. Be ready for anything, be prepared. It's like having a baby, really. Have a plan, but you might not go to plan.
Yeah, have your whale music ready, but also have the forceps ready as well.
Yeah, that's good to detail, but just use people to help you. There's agents that help you along there. There's people that ended up going up there, having the mast falling down, the propeller fell off, and they still got through it, because even in Egypt, where you're not even allowed to stop, they managed to get around these problems with people helping them along the way. You have to be dynamic, you have to problem solve, you have to be ready for anything.
I think that's right, because we had to have a water pump shipped in at huge expense. And we had to get it smuggled in, and then we had to have it smuggled in past the authorities on the Suez Canal as well, because they didn't want anybody breaking down in the canal.
Yeah, because if you have any boat issues, you're not allowed through the canal,
That's
so
right.
you have to keep it very quiet.
Yeah, that thing again is it's like adaptation. It's a dynamic situation at risk assessment.
Yeah.
You can't just have one risk assessment, put it on the table and get everybody to read it and that's the job done.
Yeah.
It's a very dynamic situation on a boat, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
So with that in mind then, if last question's always the same, if somebody's about to set off tomorrow, a family with 3 kids, and they were worried about the risks that they were about to undertake, what advice would you give them?
I would ask them to think about what is important to them, what kind of safety do they want to provide, how far do they want to go. It sounds like I'm maybe irresponsible, but I'm not irresponsible. Obviously, I care about my kids like every parent, but you have to decide what it is that's important to you, what kind of safety you want to provide, because it's an adventure. That's what you're doing. You're going on an adventure. An adventure doesn't happen unless there's some risks involved. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an adventure. It would just be a package deal somewhere.
You might as well just go to a park.
Stay local and go camping, or stay at home. So if you want to go on an adventure, obviously there's risks involved. Decide what risks you're willing to take and how much safety net stuff you put in place. Are you going to pay for a helicopter to ship you out from anywhere? Or are you going to have everyone with personal EPIRBs, attach your life jacket, etc., etc.? Are you going to stay in Greece or go around through the Red Sea? Just decide what kind of risk you want to take and how much of an adventure you want, really. Don't feel guilty. Don't let people question you, because it's really easy to start thinking, am I a really good mother because I've done risky things with my kids? Don't let people judge you. If you think it's a good adventure and you're there and you're willing to take that risk so that your kids grow in a different way, do it. You're the parent.
It's a form of tough love in a way, isn't it? Because you don't build resilience in a kid unless you put them in a certain amount of danger, or allow them into dangerous situations and have them work their way out of it, or work their way around it. A bit like Rowan in Colombia, when she went out with the kids and stopped by the police and drug dealers, they got out of it.
Yeah, there was a problem. They had to solve it. They had to make decisions. And that's the thing about adventure, really. You work as a family, as a team. to solve these problems. You teach them to make their own risk assessments, and you learn to trust your own judgment. What could be more valuable than that, really? Trusting your own judgment and trusting each other that what you're doing isn't crazy, it's actually an adventure.
Yeah, resilience and self-reliance.
In our country here, we're used to things being put in place, lots of rules and regulations, and we think if we just get into our car and drive along, everything will be fine.
But almost like delegate that safety aspect to the government or to other people.
To other people, yeah. And if you get ill, don't worry, because you can go straight down to the doctor, or you can go to hospital and they'll sort it all out for you. But that's dangerous, I think. Dangerous, taking away that decision-making process yourself and that ability to solve your own problems. We had our own medical kit and we dealt with everything, didn't we? We knew that if anything happened, we had to deal with it. Sometimes it's, okay, that's enough of that dangerous, whatever you're doing, running, jumping around the cockpit, because we don't have helicopter evacuation insurance. So, you know, you're going to have to look after yourself now. But then you learn to deal with the problem as it came up. Someone got hurt, right, how serious is this?
And you do tend to look after yourself a lot more, don't you? We did. We exercised, we made sure we were fit. Particularly after I was having back problems after doing various boat work, I made sure that I stretched every day for 9 months after that.
But I also think you increase your awareness. If you're used to being in situations where there's potential danger all around you, your awareness becomes a lot more heightened. We probably spot things that other people who are not used to it wouldn't even spot. You know, we're already arriving in a new place and it's okay. There's the beach, there's the safe bit, there's not safe. These people look strange. Are we going to make friends with them? Are they our enemies? You're so aware of what's going on and constantly risk assessing. I think you'll probably be safer than anyone else.
I'll give you a very astute take on that, because I was helping a friend do his roof the other day and I smelled burning. And I was on the roof and I said, I think something's on fire. And it turned out that his wife had left the kettle on and boiled it dry in the kitchen 2 stories below. And I was the first one to smell it. So that must come from living on a boat. The slightest smell that's just not right, or the slightest sound that's just not right, your senses are heightened to it. It's almost like a superpower in a way.
Yeah, I think it is. There's so many different types of senses, even just trying to gauge what a person's like. We had to do a lot of that, didn't we?
Yeah, you've got to read people.
You've got to try and perceive what they're like. There's so many ways that you'll grow in that way. Your children will, and you will, and you become quite good at it. It's a learning process. So that's what I would say to any family, really. See it as all adventure and open your eyes to the world and enjoy it, as well as making your risk assessments as you go along. So you're responsibly having a great adventure.
Yeah. So lean into risk, manage the risk. Don't try and avoid it.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So the question was never whether it was risk-free. Nothing ever is, really. The question is whether the risk was calculated, managed and worth it. For us, it was. All 5 of us are here, and most of us can tell a nurse shark from a bull shark. We can read a tidal stream and navigate a disputed border at night in a war zone. I'm not sure the GCSE syllabus covers that, but if you want the longer version of how we thought about all of this, there's a link in the description below. So next week, coming home, which, as it turns out, had its own risks we hadn't planned for. So see you next week. Bye.
Bye.